The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. Oh, here I am. Happy Thanksgiving. For some reason, I forgot to dial myself in. But happy Thanksgiving. Welcome. I'm the G with a PhD. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Again, happy Thanksgiving if you're into that kind of thing. I know many of you are nestled up with your families and loved ones during the holiday season kickoff. A little bit later, I'm going to do the same thing, but at the present moment, I want to get this show in and out of the way so I can go do my thing and go lay back and get full like a tick and then resume business as usual. What's up, everybody out there? ABX, I see you, Ebo Sosa, Kwame, Art Nooster. What's up, bruhs? And Muada. I gave you a shout out in the article, man, that I did in my recent blog piece that I have for thegreengorillachannel.com. So I want to give you a shout out, Muada. But anyway, I got to give a shout out to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel. So let me take care of that, man. I got to take care of that very important business. So let's do that. I'd like to give a shout out to Ethan Hines, Mr. Lou Meth, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Shop Talk Live, Jones Boy, Ryan Jackson, The Face, Mr. Heat, David the Man, Afro Analyst, NEU, Ronan Martin, Black Wizard ADOS, Camp Low, Issa Abdul Sahir, Sir Anthony, Deshaun Nolly, Ab Media 83, Aaron Lloyd, Leroy Honeycutt, MLR, Julius Ferguson, Charles Rogers, Black Dog, Brother Love, Infamous Chillin', Universal 178, Black Squird 404, Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C-Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, The Nameless Protagonist, Black Pill Ned Stark, Arthur Unknown, Odd Collard, Roderick Jackson, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Brian Williams, Kalon Jakala, Sherrod Martin, Ricky Dawson, Cedric Bowman, Truth 7360, BK Morin Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile Adept, Seventh Coast Dojo, W. Pierre 1, Rogish the Buildmonger, I Care, Force Windu, Lady Miss Thing Green, BGS Ibmore, and Marvin Battle Jr. Thank you all so much for being members of the Green Gorilla channel. I really and truly appreciate all of your help and support. Yes. Thank you for all of your help and all of your support. It enables me to enhance the production value of the channel and to continue to provide you with content. So thank you so much for your support. And thank you, Kwame Triple X. He says, when I get off my lazy ass, I'll join the channel. Till then, take this token of my appreciation. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. And let me give you a little bit of fanfare there. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that. What I want to do today is talk about the Black Matriarchy. But I'm going to read an article to you. And I've read an article from this author before. And the author of the piece is named Robert Staples. He's deceased. And he's made some comments about the concept, the idea, the notion of a black matriarchy. Now, in the previous article that I discussed, the conversation centered around angry black feminists. If you haven't seen that video, go back and do a search on Robert Staples, and it'll pop up. And you'll be able to understand his viewpoints on feminism, in particular black feminism, and whether or not they have a legitimate beef or a legitimate grievance to make. Okay? So this article is not about feminism, but it's about the idea of a black matriarchy. And many of us in the black manosphere have identified what we consider to be the black matriarchy. We call it the gynocracy. And we discuss and we talk about the various ways in which black men are reared in and enculturated into a social structure in which, for the most part, they play a subsidiary role. They're not the head of their households. In fact, if you look at the structure of family life in the black community, we know that predominantly households are single parent households, and they're run by black women. Oh, and also Ebo Sosa, thank you so much for the donation, sir. I really appreciate it. Let me give you a round of fanfare. Thank you so much, sir, for your token. I really and truly appreciate it. Blessings to you, my brother. Blessings. But having said all that, I want to go through this article because, and I think that you're not going to agree with some of the conclusions he reaches with this article. I think you're going to be upset and inflamed by some of the things that he says in the article. But I'm going to leave an invite for you. I'm going to copy the invite and put it on the clipboard here and throw it into the comment section. So if there's anything that you want to say in response to some of the things that are being said by this author about the black matriarchy, you have the opportunity to do so. But I think that this article will serve as a means by us, a means by which we can tighten up our own arguments, our own thinking, or our own musing about the very notions that we use in relation to black women and their control over family life in the black community, or whether or not it actually is a phenomenon. Is there really such a thing as the black matriarchy? So let's go ahead with that. And ICIP 13, thank you so much, sir, for your kind and generous donation. I really appreciate you looking out, man. Thank you so much, sir. Let me give you a round of fanfare. Thank you so much, sir. All of your contributions and your donations go a long way. Thank you so much, sir. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to delve off into this article. And again, if there's something that you want to say about it as I go through it, I am going to encourage you to join me in assessing or evaluating this author's thoughts about this issue. Now, he's a black man, and he is critical of black feminism. But I just think that it would be useful for us to go through this article to gather some thoughts about what he says about the concept of the black matriarchy. So, having said that, I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to get right into it. I'm assuming that you all can see this. I'll enlarge it just a little bit more so that you can see it more easily. But again, the name of the article is The Myth of the Black Matriarchy. It was published in 1970. So the conditions in which he wrote this article are different than now. Some 50 years later, we can look at and assess whether or not the author, and the author's name of the article, again, is Robert Staples. For some reason, his name doesn't appear directly after the title of the article here. It's published in a journal, and it's an esteemed journal for black academicians. It's called The Black Scholar. Okay? And so let's look at it. Let's delve off into it, shall we? The Myth of the Black Matriarchy. So the author says, in dealing with the question of the role of black women in the black struggle, one must ultimately encounter the assertion that the black community is organized along matriarchal lines. Wow, man. already, right off the bat, that the domineering black female has been placed in a superordinate position in the family by the historical vicissitudes of slavery, and that her ascendancy to power has resulted in the psychological castration of the black male and produced a host of other negative results that include low educational achievement, personality disorders, juvenile delinquency, etc. One of the solutions of the Negro question we hear is that black males divest themselves of this female control of black society and reorganize it along patriarchal lines, which will eventually solve the problem created by black female dominance. Woo-wee! Now tell me, you can't tell me that these are not the kind of conversations that we're having in the black manosphere right now. You can't tell me. Thank you so much, Sir Haitian, for your kind and generous donation. I'm going to also give you a round of fanfare, sir. Thank you. Talk about a foreshadowing. There is no foreshadowing here. We're talking about something that has been talked about or discussed for over 50 years. So I just want to say that the conversation is not brand new. Exactly, Reynolds. Exactly. SYSBM. But the funny thing about it is that SYSBM might be a formal name of the sentiment, but the sentiment goes back for decades. Decades. So anyway, I just thought that that paragraph is impactful. Okay? Let me get back to it before I lose it. Okay? Now, you're not going to like this article. I'm going to tell you right now, but I think we need to go over it. It's necessary to go over it to determine whether or not we've been able to critically analyze what we're experiencing in the various ways in which to countermand the deleterious effects of it. Maybe perhaps he is weighing in on the matter in a way that is refreshing. Maybe he's anticipated things that we have not. And maybe he's erroneous. Maybe he has not been able to see in the 70s where we would end up or land currently. But anyway, I digress too much. I want to get through this. Then he goes on to say, the myth of a black matriarchy is a cruel hoax. Wow. Now, I don't know about that, sir. I'm just saying, my experience with black family structures is profoundly different. But we'll see. I want to hear what he has to say. He says it is adding insult to injury to black liberation. For the black female, her objective reality is a society where she is economically exploited because she is both female and black. So this foreshadows intersectionality to me. He's seeming, as far as I'm concerned, to be making an intersectional point. Now, I don't know what you know, but I've gone over this quite a bit of times. It's understandable intuitively to make a declaration about the idea, the notion that if you're black, you're oppressed. If you're female, you're also oppressed. Put the two together, you kind of suffer from a sort of double jeopardy. And conceptually, you can make the case that this double jeopardy makes you more oppressed. It's an additive conceptualization of identity politics and the kinds of forms of injustice that you suffer from by means of being a member of two categories of quote unquote oppressed groups. Now, I think that there's problems with this, and I've discussed it in several videos. I've discussed it because if you look at the empirical data, it demonstrates that there are various ways in which black men are way more impacted by the notion of race and gender, because what typically tends to happen is men get X'd out of the gender equation. And it seems like Robert Staples is making this same error here. But I digress. I want to get back into the article, okay? He says she must face the inevitable situation of a shortage of black males. Oh, she must face the shortage, the situation of a shortage of black males? Now, why would there be a shortage? Are they being killed? Are they being incarcerated, these black males? And see, black scholars have presented the case that what's worse, to have to deal without the availability of a corresponding partner? Is it worse to have to deal with that situation or to have to deal with the prospect of increased chances of death? Which position would you rather be in? To deal with a shortage of a corresponding racial partner or the prospect of increased likelihood of death? Let me think. Ting, 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 ting. Oh, I'll leave it up for you to do the calculation. But anyway, let's get back into it. Because they have been taken out of circulation by America's neo-colonialist wars, railroaded into prisons, or killed off early by the effects of ghetto living conditions. To label her a matriarch is a classical example of what Malcolm X called making the victim the criminal. To explode this myth of a black female matriarchy, one must understand the historical role of the black woman and the development of that role as it was influenced by the political and economic organization of American society. Like most myths, the one of a black matriarchy contains some elements of truth. Well, goddamn. Well, goddamn, golly gee. There's some truth to it after all. Let me stop with the theatrics, man. Romello Scuggs, thank you so much, sir, for your donation. I appreciate it. Also, Ray Knowles, you too, sir. Thank you very much for the donation. I appreciate it. Also, I want to give a shout out to an individual who hit me up in the Cash App. I'd like to give a shout out to R. Henriquez. Thank you so much, sir. And Royce J. Thank you both for having contributed towards the Green Gorilla channel. I appreciate it. I'll give you one fanfare together. So he asserts that there's an element of truth to it. Okay, well, let's find out what he perceives to be, and he's a good scholar. I want to see. He is saying that there's an element of truth to it. So I would like to see what he perceives as the truthful element apart from the mythological components. I want to see how he separates the wheat from the chaff in relation to mythology and truth. So let's go down this twisting road, this sinuous path, shall we? He says, like most myths, the one of a black matriarchy contains some elements of truth. Black women have not been passive objects who were satisfied with watching their menfolk make history. If they have been contented to accept the passive role ascribed to the female gender, then the travail of the past 4 centuries might have found the black race just as extinct as the dinosaur. It is a poor tribute to their historical deeds to characterize them as sapphires, an opprobrious term that belies their real contribution to the black struggle. Well, I haven't seen yet the element of truth to it. I just see them saying that there is no element of truth to it thus far. I don't see where you're saying that there's an element of truth to it. Now, we know for a fact that black women have not been passive objects because, and it's true to some extent, women have always been allowed to play a role, an active role, in black people's liberation movements. In fact, when it came to suffrage, for both white women and black women, black men were there, championing the cause. But as soon as it came time for black men to be given a leg up, guess what you got? Tommy Curry talks about this. They consider, or what you consider to be a movement is really actually a backlash. Go look it up. You're mistaking a backlash for a movement. One could argue that the feminist movement essentially ontologically is a way to thwart, to stymie, to hamstring the development of black men. But again, I digress. Referring to black women as matriarchs is not only a contradistinction to the empirical reality of their status, but also is replete with historical and semantic inaccuracies. It was in the study by J.J. Bakofen that the term matriarchy was first employed. He was attempting to present a case for the high position of women in ancient society. His conclusion was that since free sexual relations had prevailed during that time, and that the fathers of the children were unknown, this gave women their leading status in the period he called mother right. A matriarchy is a society in which some, if not all, of the legal powers related to ordering or the ordering and governing of the family power over property, over inheritance, over marriage, over the house are lodged in women rather than men. Now I want you to sit and think about this for a minute. A society is a matriarchy in which some, if not all, legal powers relating to the ordering and governing of the family, power over property, over inheritance, over marriage, over the house are lodged in women rather than in men. If one accepts this formal definition, the consensus of most historians is that men reign dominant in all societies. No matriarchy, that is, a society ruled by women, is known to exist. And I have to ask myself, think about this right now. What legal powers do men have as it pertains to the family in contemporary Western culture? Explain it. Now, I don't know what was the conditions of family life in the 70s. I was born in 71. So I can't really speak from personal experience about that matter. But I know for a fact that at the current moment, if it is the case that family life is set up in such a way that men are not even there, then who has all of the legal power to order and govern the family and to have power over property, to relegate who gets what and does not get what? Who can decide, for the most spurious of reasons, that they will terminate the marriage contract? and who can use proxy violence against you, make allegations against you, and dissolve everything that you've worked for in the entirety of your life. That seems like that seems like a matriarchy to me, but I don't want to go too much further with it. I got to get through. From a historical perspective, the black woman has always occupied a highly esteemed place in black culture. The African woman who first reached the shores of the American continent was already part and parcel of the fabric of history. She was descended from women who had birthed some of the great militarists of antiquity, and from whose number had come some of the most famous queens to sit upon the thrones of ancient Egypt and Ethiopia. Her exploits in beauty were remembered by Semitic writers who fused into Greek mythology. Despite her important role, there's little doubt about about the respective authority patterns in the black family of the pre-slave period of African civilization. There, the family organization was patriarchal in character and was a stable and secure institution. E. Franklin Frazier described the African patriarchal family this way. His wife and children gathered around him and served him with as much respect as the best drilled domestics served their masters. And if it was a fete day or Sunday, his son-in-law or sons-in-law and daughters did not fail to be present and bring him some small gifts. They formed a circle about him and conversed with him while he was eating. When he had finished, his pipe was brought to him, and then he bade them eat. They paid him their reverences and passed into another room where they all ate together with their mother. So this is what he described as pre-slavery African civilization. Now I want you to ask yourself, does not this occur in contemporary families? Is this not happening today all throughout families and homes in America today? On Thanksgiving Day? For grandma? For mama? Where all the children are gathered around her and serving her with as much respect as the best drilled domestics serve their masters. Is this not occurring today? I'm just asking the question. I'm asking the question. Aren't big mamas everywhere being revered? They even gotten to the point now they don't cook anymore on Thanksgiving. The younger women cook. And she sits around and gets treated like a queen. She may bake something, make some rolls or do something, but very little. She's paid her dues, so to speak. Is she not being revered in the same way that we're discussing black men in pre-colonial Africa being praised? It's just a question. So anyway, the ordeal of slavery wrought many changes in the family life of Afro-Americans, including the male and female roles. Family life of the African model was an impossibility when the slave's existence had to be devoted primarily to the cultivation and manufacture of tobacco and cotton. The buying and selling of slaves involved the splitting up of families, while the maintenance of discipline on the plantation prevented the husband and father from protecting his wife and children against his white masters and other more favored slaves. So in other words, there is no control. There is no patriarchy in that situation at all. Now for black men, I think he's right about that. The financial value set on slave children and the rewards given to successful motherhood in cash, kind, and promotion from field slave to house slave gave an especially high status to the mother. You got that right. I'll give you a ding, ding, ding for that, sir. I'll give you a ding, ding, ding for that one. a status which the father could only enjoy if placed in a position akin to that of a stud animal. And there were studs on plantations. Don't get it twisted. There were. This leading to a breaking of family ties and the degradation of family life still further. Under the conditions of slavery, the American black father was forcefully deprived of the responsibilities and privileges of fatherhood. The black family's desire to remain together was subordinated to the economic interest of the slave-owning class. Only the mother-child bond continually resisted the disruptive effect of economic interest that dictated the sale of fathers away from their families. Now, they did this on purpose. This was a purposeful act to separate fathers from families. It was purposeful. Not only did the practice of selling away fathers leave the black mother as the prime authority in the household, but whenever the black male was present, he was not allowed to play the normal masculine role in American culture. Now look, I'm the messenger. Don't shoot me today, okay? I don't want to get shot today, okay? But it seems to me, if there's a continuation of these kind of practices, what else can you call it? But I'll leave it open to the interpretation of Staples. And we can come back and offer our own assessment of his assessment and determine whether or not he's explaining the condition of black family life accurately or inaccurately. Okay? So anyway, he goes into an expert from Davy. Davy reports that in the plantation domestic establishment, the woman's role was more important than that of her husband. The cabin was hers. And rations of corn and salt pork were issued to her. She cooked the meals, tended the vegetable patch, and often raised chickens to supplement the rations. If there was a surplus to sell, the money was hers. She made the clothes and reared the children. If the family received any special favors, it was generally through her efforts. Just as in the society at large, power relationships in the family are aligned along economic lines. So it just seems like, to me, he's demonstrating that the economic power during slavery lied solely within the hands of the black woman. Now, it'll be interesting to see going forward, does an economic situation predicated upon slavery translate into something liberatory and functioning hundreds of years later? But that's just a question. I want you to leave that question in your mind as we go forward. In the black slave family, the black woman was independent of the black male for support and assumed a type of leadership in her family life not found in the patriarchal family. At the same time, white society continued to deny black males the opportunity to obtain the economic wherewithal to assume leadership in the family constellation. And this, again, begs the question, is this not currently still the case? The reasons for this suppression of the black male are found in both the economic imperatives of slavery and the sexual value system of white America. In the early period of colonial America, the white family was strongly patriarchal, and many of the income and property rights enjoyed by women and children were those given to them by the husband or father. White women had primarily a chateau status, particularly in the southern part of the country. They were expected to remain chaste until marriage, while white Southern males were permitted or often encouraged to sow their wild oats before, during, and after marriage. Seriously, Robert Staples? So white women were slaves? That's the fuck with my God. Like, is that what you're actually saying, Mr.? If I could bring the man back to life and ask him the question, because he's deceased, so I'm not going to disrespect him. But for crying out loud, sir, are you saying that white women occupied the same status as that of a slave in the Southern aristocracy? Are we saying that white women did not have the opportunity to abuse both female and male slaves sexually? Is this what we're saying? Are we saying that white women did not use their power within the framework of that culture in order to objectify and to exploit black male and female bodies at their discretion? See, this is a problem. And I don't understand why black men continuously do this shit. I just don't get it. Because what we end up doing is we end up absolving all of these people, all of the elements of this culture and of that society from guilt. And we place it only on one segment of the population, and then we get to demonize him without demonizing all the others, as if they weren't in collusion and in cooperation with the entirety of the system, and that they didn't benefit in any way, and that they had no power at all. They were just these poor little hapless passive victims. I find that I just find it's inaccurate for one. For one. For two, I find it insulting. It's infantilizing to women. It strips them of all agency. And they play this game. I guarantee, man, white women do this shit all the time. They play the game, the gaslighting game of, oh, I have no power. Women have tremendous power. They always have had it. Especially over men. With their noses wide open. Women know how to twist men around like a fucking pretzel. Specific kinds of men. These tales have been told from time immemorial. Over millennia, these kind of stories have been told. But it seems like we've lost the capacity to tell the kinds of stories. Like Samson and Delilah. Where a woman can strip you of your strength. Take away your focus. We don't know how to deal with, as Dr. Tia San Johnson says, the problem of female evil and of women being succubi and being able to manipulate and control social situations amongst men. But he says, oh, he's surely able to say the ways in which black women were able to do so, but he can't do the same thing comparatively with white women. But I digress. So now we're talking about the sexual behavior of white women. A double standard of sexual behavior, allowing premarital sex for men while denying it to women, always poses the problem of what females will provide the source of sexual gratification for bachelor males. There is adequate historical evidence that black slave women were forced into various sexual associations with white males because of their captive status. Their physical compulsion was necessary to secure compliance on the part of black women is documented by Frazier. He's talking about E. Franklin Frazier, if you don't know, in relating this young man's story. Approximately a century and a quarter ago, a group of slaves were picking cotton on a plantation near where Troy, Alabama is now located. Among them was a Negro woman who, despite her position, carried herself like a queen and was tall and stately. The overseer, who was the plantation owner's son, sent her to the house on some errand. It was necessary to pass through a wooded pasture to reach the house, and the overseer intercepted her in the woods and forced her to put her head between the rails in an old stake and rider fence. And there, in that position, my great-grandfather was conceived. Thus, the double standard of premarital sexual behavior allowed the Southern white woman to remain pure, and the bodies of the captive female slaves became the objects of their rulers' sexual passion. Consequently, black males had to be suppressed to prevent them from daring to defend the black woman's honor. For those black males who would not accept their suppression passively, the consequences were severe. As one person reports, the story of his father's defense of his mother. His right ear had been cut off close to his head, and he had received 100 lashes on his back. He had beaten the overseer for a brutal attack on my mother, or assault on my mother, and this was his punishment. Furious at such treatment, my father became a different man. He was so morose, disobedient, and intractable that Mr. N decided to sell him. He accordingly parted with him not long after to his son, who lived in Alabama, and neither mother nor I ever heard from him again. Now look, we all know that rape took place of black women. Rape and sexual assault. We know this. But we also know, when I'm talking about by white men on black female bodies, we know that that took place. We know that it also took place on black male bodies as well. And we also know that white women, these chaste, are you really actually, Mr. Staples, if I could confront him today, do you honestly believe that these women are or were as chaste as they presented themselves to be? Or did they not also exploit black bodies for sexual gratification and pleasure? And oftentimes had black men killed and cried out rape when they were the ones who were doing the sexually assaultive or engaging in the sexually assaultive behavior. I would ask you that question, Mr. Staples, if I actually could talk to you, could speak to you face to face. During the period of slavery, the physical resistance of black males to the rape of their women was met with all of the brutal punishment white society could muster. They that were not totally successful in their efforts to crush the black man is evidenced in the heroic deeds of Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, David Walker, and others. The acts of these black males are sometimes played down in favor of the efforts of Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and other black females in securing the slaves' freedom. Such favoritism can be expected of a racist society bent on perpetuating the myth of a black female matriarchy, with males pictured as ineffective husbands and fathers who are mere caricatures of real men. So I agree with him on this point. Because you see the favoritism contemporarily taking place. And the problem is not that the favoritism is actually taking place on behalf of white people. It's that it's being accepted and that you have a whole variety, a consortium of black women who are reveling in this. Who are reveling in this preference gathering, this preference ordering. This is what we take umbrage with. We take pause with. Because it plays right into the hand of domination and oppression of black people as a whole, collectively. Anyway, the literary castration of the black male is illustrated by the best-selling novel, The Confessions of Nat Turner, which generated much heat and little light in terms of understanding one of the most important black revolutionists of his time. The cultural stereotype of the domineering black woman belies the existence of masses of black women who constituted a defenseless group against the onslaught of white racism in its most virulent sexual and economic manifestations. That black women are still involuntarily subjected to the white male's lust is reflected in the revelations of a white employer to John Howard Griffin, as reported in his book, Black Like Me. He told me how all of the white men in the region craved colored girls. He said he hired a lot of them both for housework and in his business. And I guarantee you, I've had it in every one of them before they ever get on the payroll. I've had it in every one of them before they ever get on the payroll. I've had it. I'm assuming that this is an allusion to I've had sex with them. Surely some refuse. I suggested cautiously. Not if they want to eat or feed their kids, he snorted. If they don't put out, they don't get the job. Now I'm interested in figuring out what the date of this book is. I want to know that. I wonder how involuntarily or involuntary this kind of practice is. I'm just asking the question. I mean, to me, it sounds like I'm going to do something strange for a little piece of change. But that's just, me being an asshole. Okay? Black women have frequently been slandered by the cultural folklore that the only free people in the South were the white man and the black woman. While there have been a few black women who have gained material rewards and status through the dispensation of their sexual favors to white men, a few black women who have gained material rewards and status through the dispensation of their sexual favors to white men, the massive indictment of all black women for the acts of a few only creates unnecessary intragroup antagonisms and impedes the struggle for black self-determination. So he's alluding to some shit. Either it's happening or it's not. Either you can come up from busting it wide open for whitey, get paid for being a little freak for white boy, or not. How does it go? I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'm not a black woman. I can't answer that question. I don't know what the relationship is between black women and white men on a personal, experiential level, phenomenologically. I don't know that. I don't know if they're propositioning, look, bend over for a little piece of change, you're going to come up. I don't know. But I know black men don't have that kind of power to come up. We don't have that kind of power to come up. Not in this society. Anyway, many proponents of the black matriarchy philosophy assert that the black female gained ascendancy in black society through her economic support of the family. Although the unemployment rate of black males is disproportionately higher than that of white males, only a very small minority of black families with both parents present or dependent on the mother for their maintenance. It is a rather curious use of logic to assume that black females, who in 1960 earned an annual wage of $2,372 a year, as compared to the annual wage of $3,410 for a white woman and $3,789 for black men, have an economic advantage over any group in this society. Boy, that shit is sure changed. I don't know what conditions obtained in the 60s, but there are a whole host of women who have been able to enter into the marketplace in American culture and society and to outperform their black male counterparts. But I would have to go back and do a comparative analysis and then go in and adjust for different models of wealth and income between two different time periods in order to make an assessment relative to how that statement compares with that of today. However, what semblance of black female dominance that is found in our society can be traced to the persistent rate of high unemployment among black males, which prevents them from becoming the major economic support of their family. The economic causes of female dominance are manifest. So he is admitting that there is some economic dominance, or excuse me, let me rephrase that there is economic causes for female dominance. Namely, you starve the black man so that he is impotent, he can't contribute, and then you up and give the female the opportunity while you ask her to bust it wide open and tell her bring it back. And then you humiliate and emasculate the man. Now see, if black women know that this is occurring and they wanted to stop, they can stop it. Or either you like it because it gives you some semblance of control and you want to continue to revel in the slave culture. What do you want to do? What's your preference here? Or do you want to sit there and talk about how black men ain't shit? Black men are trash. Black men are the white people or black people. Now, this is, even the context in which this conversation is taking place makes the whole notion or the concept that black men are the white people of black people sound fucking retarded. And I'm sorry to use that term because we live in a politically correct culture, so you can't even say things like that anymore. Man, did I tell you happy Thanksgiving, man? Happy Thanksgiving to all of y'all out there, man. Happy Thanksgiving, okay? if you believe in that kind of thing, okay? All I know is the Wampo and all were invited by the Quakers to share in a harvest of corn or some other crops or whatever the case may be. While at the same time, correspondingly, their entire culture was in danger of being obliterated by white colonist settlers. White colonist settlers. That's what I wanted to say. But I digress. Let me get back to this article, man. So, the economic causes of female dominance are manifest. For instance, the percentage of black women in the labor market declines as the percentage of black males employed in manufacturing and mechanical industries is increasing. The effect of higher black male employment is the male's added responsibility for his family support. The authority of the wife declines and that of the husband increases. Many black men have not been permitted to become the kings of their castles. That's what we're saying. If black women wanted to work, there was always employment for them, even during depressions. Sometimes it was even a higher kind of work than that available to black men. Historically, black males have suffered from irregularity of employment more than any other segment of the American proletariat. Thus, they have been placed in a weak economic position which prevents them from becoming steady providers for their families. Any inordinate power that black women possess, they owe to white America's racist employment barriers. I agree with that. The net effect of this phenomenon is, in reality, not black female dominance, but greater economic deprivation for families deprived of the father's income. But wait a minute here, sir. I'd like to say, and this is just a point of contention that I would ask Mr. Staples if he were in front of my face. If it is the case that we know that this is a phenomenon that is occurring through deliberate orchestration on behalf of the predominant society in which we live. And that there are a whole host of black women who encourage this and talk about black girl magic and how black men ain't shit and how they're morally irresponsible without paying attention to the structural impasses that exist and the tinkering with the black family on behalf of not just conservatives, but black liberals. If there's complicity there, then we got a problem, sir. Don't you think, Mr. Staples? Sir? So anyway, let's go on. He says it again. The myth of the black matriarchy, or of a black matriarchy, was strengthened by the Moynihan report released in 1965. Moynihan's central thesis was that black family, or the black family, was crumbling, and that a major part of the blame lay with the black matriarchy extant in the black community. Some of the evidence cited would lack credibility to all but a group bent on making the victim responsible for the crimes of the criminal. So what he's doing is he's shifting the focus and emphasis away from black women, and he's placing it on the larger white patriarchal structure. That's what he's trying to do. I'm letting you know what move he's making intellectually, philosophically, and axiologically. That's what he's doing. Such sources of proof, but see, my whole problem is, if you are complicit with the undermining of black men, does that not make you complicit with the same structure in which you exist? Namely, racist, anti-black misandry. Does it not? Mr. Staples, I'm asking the question. I want clarification. Does it not? If you start talking about be quiet, black man, you talk too much. You need to be quiet. Oh, no, we don't need any programs for black men to help raise them up. No. Oh, I think black men want to support the patriarchy every time they try to establish themselves in such a way as to be able to exercise agency and flourish and function and thrive in the current environment in which they exist. Then you can't just start to absolve them from all of the fucking guilt. And then you might be able to then thereby say something in terms of assessment about a gynocracy. But, hey. Anyway, I'm just trying to tell you what this guy's doing here. And we can talk about the relative merits of this strategy. I'm just letting you know what the strategy is as I read this in real time. Some of the evidence cited would lack credibility to all but a group bent on making the victim responsible for the crimes of the criminal. So he makes it seem as if, to me, again, that it is women who are subjected to criminal activity on behalf of a white patriarchal society that strips not only black women, but black men of agency. And it really is the black woman who's the victim alongside that of black men, but black men can't focus on black women as being culprits in this because they're just victims in this. They have no agency in this. They have no choice to make in this. Boy, things have changed. All I would say, Mr. Staples, would you come through with that kind of assessment and analysis now? Such sources of proof as the higher educational level of black females vis-a-vis black males conveniently overlook the alternative possibility. The many black males are forced to terminate their formal education early in order to help support their family. Instead, they cite the wholly unsupported statement that a Negro, or by a Negro expert, that historically in the matriarchal society, mothers made sure that if one of their children had a chance for higher education, the daughter was the one to pursue it. In a society where men are expected to have a greater amount of education and earn a higher income, it is difficult to imagine black women celebrating the fact that over 60% of the college degrees awarded American blacks are received by women. Huh? Are they not doing it? I just don't. Mr. Staples, Dr. Staples, bruh. Are they not doing it? It's important to read over that again. In a society where men are expected, in the black community, men are not expected to have more degrees. We're not expected to be as educated. We're expected to be fucking dumb and shut up and do what I tell you. I'll sign the paperwork. Let me do the talking. You don't know what you're talking about. You can't even read. You need to get yourself together. You need to get yourself straight. You don't know what you're saying. I don't agree with what you're talking about. The end result of this disparity, according to one study, is that almost 50% of black female college graduates are married to men employed at a lower socioeconomic than their wives. Moreover, according to Moynihan and his cohorts, the black matriarchy is responsible for the low educational achievement of black males. In marshaling this arsenal of evidence, Moynihan was apparently unable to find any likelihood that the racist educational system, with its concomitant racist teachers, bore any responsibility for the failure of black males to reach acceptable educational levels by white standards. In the criminalization of the victim, countervailing evidence is dismissed out of hand. The fact that black schools are more likely to be housed in inadequate buildings with inferior facilities, staffed by inexperienced and racist teachers, and overcrowded only confuses the issue, especially where there is a matriarchal structure that is more handily blamed. So he's saying that the school system with racist teachers is responsible for the miseducation of black boys, not so much their mothers. That's what he's saying here, okay? According to the experts, the black family, and then he puts experts in air quotes, the black male is harshly exploited by the black matriarchy. Many black mothers, they report, express an open preference for girls. I mean, shit, just recently, I saw a video in which there were young black girls who said, we don't want to have black boys. We're going to abort the black babies, the black male babies. This ain't a real fucking report. This is actual factuals. I'm trying to give you some lessons. Lesson number 2, dip diver, civilize a 85er. I make the devil hit his knees and say the high five. That's some J Electronica for you, in case you're into it. But anyway, actual factuals. This charge is confirmed by a white psychologist described by a major magazine as devoid of any racism, who states that black males have an inordinate hatred of their mothers or for their mothers. Shit, in the black community, there is mother worship. Although there are research studies that reveal no sex role preference on the part of black mothers, it appears that the practitioners of white social science have not been content with pitting husband against wife, but also wish to turn sons against mothers, brothers against sisters. The evidence for these assumptions, you must mean these assumptions, is not only flimsy, but in some cases also non-existent. If the research is similar to other psychological studies, they have probably used a sample of 10 blacks who, on the verge of a psychotic breakup, wandered into their mental clinic. These charges of black men hating their mothers must be very puzzling to the black mothers aware of them. They would be puzzled because they realize that if a preference is shown for any sex role in the black family, it would more likely be expressed in favor of the male child. Huh. That ain't happening today, bruh. Huh? You think that's happening today? Mr. Staples, man. Come on, bruh. 2020 Staples. Preference for male children? When you got women walking around, little girls 17, talking about they're going to abort the black male babies. In a society where all we talk about is black girl magic. In a society where the Black Panther is supposed to be replaced by Shuri. In a culture in which there are actual strategies in which the mononuclear family is supposed to be itself made to be non-normal. But there's a preference for black male children? Many black mothers, out of fear, real or fancy, repress the aggressive tendencies of their sons in order to save them from the white man's chopping block. That shit needs to stop. Repress the aggressive tendencies of their son. Don't do that. For to act as a man in a society which feared his masculinity, the black male was subject to the force of brutal white retaliation. The black mother had to constantly live with the realization that her son might be killed for exercising the prerogatives of manhood. Well, fuck it. It's better to die a man than to live as a motherfucking less than one. For those black mothers who exercised like a demon, their sons' aggressive drives out of concern for their safety, hatred seems to be an inappropriate and almost improbable response. We don't have to hate that. We just need to say, that's fucked up. Don't do that. I'm thinking of, Cameron and Paid in Full. Motherfuckers die every day, B. I'd rather die and be dead than to live like a bitch. Sorry. Let me express something before I move forward, man. Let me say this before I go forward, man. The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. I gotta say that, man. And look, no respect, man. I mean, no disrespect to Dr. Staples, man. Look, I'm just asking if I could be in conversation with him. Is his assessment one in which upholds and withstands the test of time? I'm not sure that it does. I'm not quite so sure that it does. In addition to the host of pathologies putatively generated by the black matriarchy, and what that means is the pathologies associated and put in placeholded or cast to, or the kind of pathologies blamed on the black matriarchy. The familiar theory of a relationship between fatherless homes and juvenile delinquency is brought up again. I just heard that recently from some young guy who came on my show when we were talking about hip hop the other day. So the idea is that the black matriarchy creates by fiat juvenile delinquency because there aren't any black men there in order to instill values and to impart wisdom to the male children and to keep them in check. So he's talking about that right now. The fatherless homes creating and contributing towards criminal delinquency. Now, whether you want to talk about it or not, look, we know that there's a correlation between fatherless homes and criminal activity. Now, we can talk about the various factors and the constellation of circumstances which create single parent homes and absentee fatherism. But we know there is a correlation between fatherless homes and exacerbated juvenile delinquency. But, okay. While there is nothing inherently wrong with the woman heading a family, the problem arises when she tries to compete in a society which promotes, expects, and rewards male leadership. Bruh, that ain't the society we living in now, bruh. This society does not reward male leadership. If anything, it considers male leadership to be the patriarchy, which in and of itself is essentially, innately, inherently oppressive, dominating, violent, exploitative. This guy's writing in the 70s, though. So he's writing in the 70s. So I'm going to give him a little bit of slack. But if I could bring him forward until today, up until today, if I could bring him here right now, I'd have a whole bunch of questions to ask him. Consequently, she is unable to bring her family the shared value of social and economic rewards received by father-headed households. She is unable to bring her family the share of the social and economic rewards received by father-headed households. We got to ask ourselves, is that a condition that obtains today? It is this very factor which probably accounts for any discernible correlation between mother-headed households and juvenile delinquency. So she can't have a father-headed household because there's not enough males around for them. And this is the factor that probably accounts for any discernible correlation between mother-headed households and juvenile delinquency. The children in a fatherless home are frequently relegated to the lowest living standards in our society. The problems facing husbandless women with children are compounded by the inequities in American society based on sex role ascriptions. Look here, man. Look. Look, the other day, man, so Dr. Neal, man, posted a video on Facebook, and it was about Kevin Samuels, okay? And the funny thing, this is the funny thing, I've listened to Kevin Samuels' show on several occasions, right? And when I look at that show, I noticed that there are a plethora of women who have the opportunity to be involved in relationships with men. I notice it every time. There are women who are in situations in which they can be involved with a variety of men. But they don't want that fucking man. Oftentimes the man is the father of their children. They don't want that motherfucker. They want to fuck him and then all of a sudden go get a cleanup man who's supposed to take care of her and her fucking 2 or 3 kids. They want a motherfucker after they done got their asses bent over, busted open, wide open, bring it back. Now they want a motherfucker to come in and fucking play Captain Save 'em. Who making 300,000 plus. Where the fuck does this work at? So it's not that there aren't any men available. They just don't want the motherfucking men that they chose to lay down with to make them part of the fucking family structure. Oh, I divorced him. Oh, I got rid of him. Oh, he was not suitable for me. Why wasn't he suitable for you? It's women out here right now that have men Like, say, for example, fucking Dr. Dre. His wife just fucking got burned out on his ass. Emmitt Smith. His fucking wife burned out on his ass. Tiger Woods. That's a white woman, but shit, his wife burned out on his ass. It's women burning out on men all the fucking time. Michael Jordan, first wife, divorced his ass. Eddie Murphy, his wife divorced his ass. Now, these men have the capacity and the ability to get back into the game and find other women, but the whole point is, it ain't that there's no availability of men. These women just don't want to fuck with certain kinds of men. Men that are not in the fucking top 5 percentile. Because they feel like, oh, don't matter what they look like, what their educational level is, what their job is, they feel that they're entitled to the best of the fucking best of the best of the best. What makes them feel this way? I'm just asking the question. I've been with women, man, who butted up against my head. I got a fucking doctoral degree. I still don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, even though I got a goddamn doctoral degree. I still don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I can't know, because you don't know. That's some shit in a book. That really don't have nothing to do with nothing for real, because, because you what? Anybody can get a PhD. Anybody can, look, I think anybody can. Given the fact that they actually sit down and fucking perform the discipline that it takes to actually do it, I think anybody can. But the question is, how many people actually do it? But even those kind of women, they'll still come in and tell you that what you know ain't shit. So it's, look, I'm just saying. I don't think that there's a dearth of black men. I just think that a lot of black women want a perfect black man. That shit doesn't exist. There are no fucking unicorns. Now, there are a certain group of men in the top percentile, but they're not going to fuck around with your raggedy ass, sit here and deal with your fucking attitude and ignorant comportment. That shit is not going to happen. I'm going to take a quick break, man. I'm going to come back and finish this damn article, man. I'm in it an hour and 30 minutes. We got a little bit of ways to go. It ain't that much more. It's almost over. It's 3 more pages, I think, and then it's done. Yeah, it's 3 more pages. So I'm gonna kind of rush through it, but I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back and get through this thing and be done with it, man. Okay? So let's take this quick break. And then I'm going to come back. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. Yeah, I just took a break for a quick minute, man. I had to recharge my batteries for a second, put in a new battery. you know, but I'm back, and what I'm doing is reading an article written by Robert Staples called The Black Matriarchy, Myth or Reality. That's the name of the article. It's published in a journal called The Black Scholar, and we're going through this exercise. Okay? I'm asking you to support the Green Gorilla channel if you can. If you enjoy this kind of content, please make a contribution towards the Green Gorilla channel. Now, getting back, and I think this is going to be a good piece. See, a lot of people just left the show right now because I guess they didn't want to deal with the commercial break. I guess I'm supposed to be an automaton and speak straight up for 2-3 hours at a time without being able to take a breath of air. But this is going to be interesting because this talks about the attitudes of black women in relation to the so-called matriarchy, the black matriarchy. So, he says, Robert Staples does, it is impossible to state that the black woman is just like the woman of other races. Got that right. Her history is different from that of the prototypical white woman, and her present-day behavioral patterns have evolved out of her historical experiences. In general, she is more aggressive and independent than white women. There are studies that show that black females are more non-conforming than white females as early as age 10. The reason for her greater self-reliance is that it has been a necessary trait in order for her and her children to survive in a racist and hostile society. Moreover, the society has permitted her more self-assertion than the white female. Now, I don't know how true that is the case. Like it seems to me that white women are pretty fucking assertive when they want to be, especially over the lives of black males and black women. But I digress from that point. But I will say, black women are aggressive as fuck. And it's one thing to be aggressive in resistance to a white society, but it's another thing to turn around and be aggressive to black men on account of it. Among male chauvinists, aggressiveness per se may be considered an undesirable trait in women and should be restricted to the male species. Look, I don't have a problem with a woman being aggressive. Not really, as long as she's not fucking aggressive to me. If you want to get on some Tupac shit and say it's me against the world, me and you, baby, Bonnie and Clyde, each and every time that we ride, we can do that. But as soon as you turn that aggression to me, we got a fucking problem. We can be on the all I need in this life of sin is me and my girlfriend. We can be on that. Blind to ride to the bloody end. Just me and my girlfriend. Look for me. We can do that. But as soon as you come out with that aggression to me, then it's a fucking problem. But this is all part of the age-old myth about the inherent nature of woman as a passive creature. I, for one, don't believe that women by nature are passive creatures. I've never experienced that shit. Not in my experiences. I've never experienced women just sitting back and letting shit happen to them. It's not been my experience. More often than not, it has served as a subterfuge for the exploitation of women for the psychological and material gain of the male species. Black women lose nothing by their greater tenacity. That tenacity has historically been a source of strength in the black community. While white women have entered the history books for making flags and engaging in social work, black women have participated in the total black liberation struggle. That's a confusing statement to me. So you mean white women didn't fucking get into skirmishes and shit, didn't fight in wars or act as spies and do nothing vital? I mean, like this whole notion that this guy has about women, fucking white women just being some fucking damsels in distress, it's erroneous. It's inaccurate. And it's infantilizing of white women is what the fuck it is. I'm keeping it 100, man. While recognizing these differences, the question before us now is how much power do black women really have and how is it exercised? Power is commonly defined as the ability to dominate men, to compel their actions even against their wishes. The black woman has often been characterized as a more powerful figure in the family because she participates more in making decisions about what kind of car to buy, where to go on vacation, etc. In certain cases, she is the only one to make major decisions. A closer inspection of her decision-making powers often reveals that she does not make decisions counter to her husband's wishes, but renders them because he fails to do so. Really, man? I mean, this is just like saying some black men are just some pussies, man. This is what this dude is saying right here. He fails to decide. So she gotta make the decision. She wearing the pants because this nigga can't wear them. Really, man? For real, bruh. That's where we going with this shit here. The reason he defers to her in certain decisions is simply because she's better equipped to make them. She's better equipped to make them. Usually she has more formal education than her mate, and in matters relating to the white society, she knows her way around better. Really? I mean, what the fuck, bruh? Either the black woman is a victim or she has agency and she knows how to manipulate her agency in order to make shit better for the entirety of the black community. What the fuck is it? You can't waffle and oscillate between she's a victim and she has agency and she knows how to maneuver around in the fucking society. Which one the fuck is it? You can't waffle and move around like a goddamn fan and rotating in one direction and the other. You got to make a choice about this. She's more familiar with the machination of white bureaucracies since she contacts the white world with the white world, or since contacts with the white world have been more available to black women than to black men. Now I say that's the truth. But what kind of contact does she have with the white system other than a subordinate contact? A sexually exploitative contact? This shit, man. Anyway, making decisions that black men cannot or will not make is a poor measure of the power of a black woman, the power a black woman has in the family. The chances are good that no decisions are made which he actively opposes. Now think about a culture in which you got a group of women who basically think that they fucking know more than you know about every goddamn thing, from dealing with bureaucracies, from going to the store and going to find out what the better deal is, to going to buy a car, to fucking anything in the goddamn planet, where we going on vacation. Think about a black man having to deal with that shit. And tell me, is that not domination? And then throw aggressiveness on top of that shit. Then throw on top of that family law. No fault divorce. Child support. And being able to call the police on a motherfucker anytime you get ready. And then we still gonna say victimization? I mean, what? This shit got me confused. Anyway, power alignments are frequently based on the alternatives an individual has in a situation where there is a conflict of interest. It is where the black male achieves the upper level of the power dimension. It is here where the black male achieves the upper level of the power dimension. Whenever a black man and a black woman find themselves in objective and irremediable conflict, the best solution is to find another mate. The objective reality of the black woman is that black men are scarcer than hen's teeth. For a variety of reasons, there is an extremely low sex ratio in the black community, especially during the marriageable years, 18 to 45 years. This means that black women must compete for a relatively scarce commodity when they look forward to marriage. They are buyers in a seller's market. Black women, like all women, have their affectional and sexual needs. Many a black male's shortcoming, I mean, come on, dude. Many a black man's shortcomings must be tolerated for the sake of affection. I've almost lost my will to read the rest of this shit. I'm serious, man. I'm at the point where I'm about to throw my motherfucking vape stick at this shit. Many of black male shortcomings must be this because all he's doing is expressing the fact that black men don't know shit. They don't know how to make decisions, that they're ambivalent and bitchy, and they need to defer to the fucking goddamn decision-making prowess of black women because they have a greater power and a greater educational level to make ratio-sinative and syllogistic assessments of what the fuck going on in the world. The low sex ratio hardly allows black women, basically saying black men are concussers. The low sex ratio hardly allows black women to exercise any meaningful control over black. Bullshit, it means they get to pick who the fuck they want and use who they want. I've even seen posts that women prefer black men like this. They prefer them dumb. That's their preference. They prefer uneducated, non-authoritative. It's like these motherfuckers want wives and shit. They want a motherfucking wife. The low sex ratio hardly allows black women to exercise any meaning. So in other words, it's a buyer's market for men. I mean, they get their pick of the litter. Really? Does that actually square with the experience of black men? There's so much of a dearth of black men in the environment that they can find a woman easily. And women are like desperate for men and shit. Does that sound like actual reality? As long as she is confined to an area in which she must compete fiercely for a mate, she remains the object of sexual exploitation and the victim of all the social evils such exploitation involves. In the Negro population, the excess of girls is the greatest in the 15 to 44 age group, which covers the college years and the age when most marriages occur. The explosive social implications of an excess of more than 500,000 Negro girls and women over 14 years of age are obvious. How much of the tensions and conflicts traditionally associated with the matriarchal framework of Negro society are in reality due to this imbalance and the pressures it generates? And lastly, this is the last section I'm reading. Another index of the matriarchy is simply the percentage of female-headed households in the black community. The Moynihan theory of the black matriarchy derives from his findings that 25% of all families have a female lead. Huh. I wonder what that number is today. 25% of all black families have a female head. This proof, he puts the quotes, of a matriarchal family structure brings up many interesting questions, not excluding the important one. Over whom do these women have control? Logically, the only power they have is to face a super exploitation by the system of white racism that bioparental black families do not encounter to the same degree. The matriarchy myth is not always applied to only black families. A number of social scientists claim that suburban white families are matriarchal. They point out that the commuting father's disappearance during the day leaves the mother in charge of the home and children. As a result, the father's power is reduced to these areas, and he is relegated to enacting the feminine role of handyman. This observation has prompted one person to suggest that exhorting black slum dwellers to emulate the presumably more stable white middle class, restore father to his rightful place, and build a more durable family will subsequently expose them to the threat of the suburban matriarchy. Any profound analysis of the black matriarchy presupposition should reveal its fallacious underpinnings. Recognition of this fact raises the crucial question as to why white society continues to impose this myth on the consciousness of black people. This writer submits that it has been functional for the white ruling class through its ideological apparatus to create internal agonisms in the black community between black men and women to divide them and to ward off effective attacks on the external system of white racism. Now, I can agree with that to some degree. It is a mere manifestation of the divide and conquer strategy used by most ruling classes through the annals of man to continue the exploitation of an oppressed group. In the colonial period of Algeria, the same situation existed wherein the colonists attempted to use the female population to continue their colonial rule. Fanon reports that the colonial administration devised a political doctrine for destroying the structure of Algerian society by encouraging Algerian women to break the bonds of male domination in their society, setting male against female. The colonialists hoped to dilute the Algerian capacity for resistance. According to Fanon, it was the woman who was given the historical mission of shaking up the Algerian man, converting the woman, winning her over to the foreign values, wrenching her free from her status, was at the same time achieving a real power over the man and attaining a practical, effective means of destructing Algerian culture. In contemporary America, a female liberation movement is beginning to gain impetus. This movement is presently dominated by white women seeking to break out of the centuries-old bondage imposed upon them by white male chauvinists of the ruling class. Whether black women should participate in such a movement is questionable. Well, shit, they deep into that motherfucker. They 12 toes in now, partner. His hatred of a social curse, which is part and parcel of an exploitative society that discriminates not only against blacks, but also women, should not be confused with hatred of men. Shit. I don't want to get into that. The adversary is not one sex or the other. It is the racist capitalist system which needs, breeds, and preys upon oppressions of all types. Any movement that augments the sex role antagonisms extant in the black community will only sow the seed of disunity and hinder the liberation struggle. Whether black women will participate in a female liberation movement is, of course, up to them. Well, they already made that choice, bruh. One, however, must be cognizant of the need to avoid a diffusion of energy devoted to the liberation struggle, lest it dilute the overall effectiveness of the movement. Black women cannot be free as women until all blacks attain their liberation. They ain't saying that, bruh. They saying if black women are free, everyone else will be free by default, bruh. That's what they're saying. That's straight out of the playbook of the Combahee River Collective. The role of the black woman in the black liberation struggle is an important one and cannot be forgotten. From her womb have come the revolutionary warriors of our time. The revolutionary vanguard has male leadership, but the black woman has stepped beside her man, engaged in a struggle and giving him her faith, total faith and commitment. She has thrust herself into the life or death struggle to destroy the last vestige of racism and exploitation in the American social structure. You should see my face. In light of, or in the process of her lifelong fight against racist oppression, the myth of her matriarchal nature will soon join the death agony of America's racist empire. Until that time arrives, the black woman should be revered and celebrated not only for her historical deeds in the building of African civilization, in the struggle to maintain the black peoples of America as a viable entity, but for her contemporary role in enabling black people to forge ahead in their efforts to achieve a black nationhood. Now, let me just say this. I'm going to invite anybody who has anything to say. I'm going to hide this article from now. I know it's Thanksgiving. I'm going to invite anybody who wants to say anything to come through and make a statement. I'm about to get up out this joint, though. I think that his prognostication, his forecasting, his prophecy on what would occur and how it would occur is off the mark. That's just my assessment of the situation, man. Because what ultimately has ended up happening is black women have conjoined themselves, by and large, to the overall women liberation movement, which was a white woman's movement. And there have been many black women who've discussed this. How that ain't got shit to do with black women. I mean, everyone from Shahrazad Ali to Brenda Verner to Julia Hare to Delethea Watkins. There are a whole host of women that's pointing this shit out. And I ain't trying to knock all women, man, all black women. But we just got to keep shit real here, man. Right now, the language of white feminism is deeply interconnected and interwoven into the black culture that we black men in the manosphere call the guy knockers. It's the truth, man. It's the truth, man. So I just take umbrage with some of the things the brother said, but we can use it as a means by a rubric by which to continue to evaluate our current predicament. And I think it was a useful exercise. Brother Chaos Rain, welcome to the stream. How you doing on this Thanksgiving Day? Chaos Rain, are you there?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, what's going on? And I'm gonna go ahead. Speak, brother.
I got echo?
No, you don't have echo.
Yes. This is a very informative stream. Hold on, let me make sure if I don't. No, that's not me. Oh, you know what? Let me turn this off. Sorry, I echo myself. Sorry. All right, that should stop. The gynocracy, was this a term developed by the black man or is a non-black man that came up with it? I'm just reference. If you from your information, this has been spreading around for years.
I'm not exactly sure, so for fear of making an articulation that I can't confirm or deny, I will respectfully decline to answer that question. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Now, in regards to this myth, I think it lays out the information alone. I did a stream, not on this channel, but another channel about this so-called strong black independent woman, and it was written by a black woman that had to self-analyze herself, and it's saying about this strong independence, and she already confirmed it's a mental illness. Because no other group of women does this. So,
well, to some extent, I agree with what you say here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the very idea, and there was recently a woman that came forth and said the same thing about like there's a host of black women who seemingly want to maintain independence. Independence of what? Interconnection and interdependence on black men who are your fathers, your brothers, your uncles, your sons. I mean, you're beginning to see this shit. And to me, it is a sickness. It's internalized racism, is what it is to me. And it grows out of slave culture. It's an outgrowth of slave culture. Now the question is, do we think that this shit is going to bear fruit in the long run? Is it going to be fecund in the long term? I don't think that it is, but that's just my assessment, my brother. Dr. Ronald Neal, what's good with you, my brother?
Hey brother, man. I I tried to resist, man. You were doing your thing, man. You were going hard in the paint, and I said I just wanted to listen. I just wanted to listen, and I was soaking up everything, man. But you know, I've read this article over and over and over again over the years, and I always had a problem with it for the same reasons that you take issues with it, you know. And I think what happened here is that Staples is over responding to, you know, the Moynihan backlash and all of that and the thesis of the black matriarchy. And what's interesting, man, is that so, you know, years later when he writes, you know, Black Masculinity, the book, which comes out around 1982, he has a very different tone. The same article is in there, but you know he has essays in there that kind of balances things out. So there's a little bit of a dissonance that exists, man. But here's what I wanted to say, man. It is clear that at this time when he was writing this article, man, he's trying to save face. He's trying to paint a particular type of picture of black women, which really endears black women to white society. You know, it makes white society more empathetic, you know, towards them. And his, you know, his outlook on black men, I mean, it's a very conventional misandrous type of perspective. I mean, it's a very, you know, condescending way of looking at us in terms of, you know, black men just being socially inferior. You know what I mean? And it just comes out clear in the article, you know. And I think what you're doing is correct in terms of questioning those assumptions then in light of where we are today. And the fact of the matter is, man, is that we refuse to deal candidly with the reality that when it comes down to who is preferred, when it comes down to, you know, who the white majority prefers, it's simply, it ain't black men. It is not black men. And also on top of that, we just belittle and trivialize the true economic, the socio-economic condition of black men in the United States. And what's so problematic with Staples is Staples is one of the first persons who responded to black feminists in the late 1970s. And this was after Michelle Wallace and everything like that, man. He was one of the first persons who really stressed the impact of capitalist society on black men, and that you cannot deal with the position of black men in this society without talking about capitalism. And so this piece right here, man, is just, it is a complete contradiction to stuff that came, you know, much later. But the point is that he over responded, man, to the Moynihan thing and refused to acknowledge that, yes, we do have a significant, at that particular time, a significant slice of black society that was dominated by female head of households. And since that time, it has increased 50-fold.
Yes, it has. And one of the things that's interesting about it, Dr. Neal, is that, and I said this in relation to my perusal of this article, namely that Staples is issuing a kind of caveat, a warning to black women about embracing white women's liberation struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't hearken that message. Black women have dived head off. That's why I say they are 12 toes in to the white feminist or white women's liberation movement. And what they have done is, and you've said this on many occasions in your own videos, this preferred status that black women enjoy, that they've been able to enjoy since the plantation, is something that they are reveling in. They call this shit magic now.
Yes.
Now, the magic is only able to exist by the creation of a Dorian Gray composite for black men.
There you go.
You don't get the magic of black women without putting black men in the fucking dungeon.
Yeah.
You don't have this is just the way white supremacy works, man. And liberals do it. The liberals are just as fucking guilty as anybody else for this phenomenon. So they play good cop, bad cop all the time. And I'm sick and tired of Negroes with this simplistic conceptualization of what politics actually means in America and don't understand, like Chaos Rain just said, what is a bird? What is the essence of a bird? To fly. They can't fly without a left and a right wing.
The wings, left wing, right wing. All forms makes a bird. Same thing.
So in essence, what I'm saying is the American eagle is committed to the subjugation of black men, and they will uplift any other group or demographic, or they will put anyone in place. It's like the Algeria example, right? Which I think is pretty emblematic of the kind of, if we're not fully, because when we don't, racism is not ostentatious anymore, and it's not physically upfront the way that it was during segregation. There are elements of it, but they redirect the energy, and now they use the criminal justice system, and they try to excuse this kind of behavior. So it takes on a different face. They put on a different mask with it. Okay, but ultimately, we got the same shit going on. The same thing is occurring, and now black women are using the language of white women's emancipatory struggle. But I'm still wondering, what the fuck did they need to be emancipated from? Because I mean, if you look at it, they didn't come over here outside of the context of their own free will and volition. Nobody put them on put some chains on their ass and told them to come over here in these ships. They came their ass on these motherfuckers, and they came to Ellis Island voluntarily, man. They brought their ass over here voluntarily, looking for opportunity, just like the white men they came over to this motherfucker with. Okay? And when they got here, they participated in the racial categorical project just like white men did. And when it served their interest to talk badly and to subjugate black men, they did everything they could to do it in order to advance their own interest. I mean, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cody Stanton are perfect examples of that shit. I mean, they threw Frederick Douglass under the bus real fast.
He did.
But now we sitting here, and black women are using the same fucking language of these women who don't give a shit about them. White women are the most wealthy fucking group in America, man. That's my viewpoint. So white men make the money, but they end up fucking dying and leaving it to who?
To them.
Who they end up leaving the fucking money to? This game here, man, that's being played. See,
white woman.
I'm just, look, right? It's Thanksgiving. I'm supposed to be in a festive and a joyous mood.
No, man, you're doing work, man. You're putting in work, brother. This is our soul. This is in our being. This is who we are, bro. This is who we are. You working, I'm working. Those of us who do this are working right now, man. It's in our souls. Listen, man, this thing is a team sport, bro. This thing, we saw this in 2016 with all the white women who voted for Trump, and then we saw it again, this time around in the election. That white women, and I've said this and I'm going to continue to say this, is that white women and white men work together as a team to dominate everybody, okay? To dominate us, all right? So they are the second arm of white supremacy, bro. And feminism simply promotes the myth that they have no part in white supremacy. It promotes the myth that somehow or another their status is the same as black people or the Negro, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? And white and black women, unfortunately, have bought into it. Okay, the black feminists bought into it. Black women buy into it, de facto in terms of how they have internalized the culture, mass media, education, everything, all the propaganda that they get over and over again about female empowerment, man. It's a very sophisticated enterprise, bro. And they cannot see the fact that their structure, that this single parent, this one woman household, okay, lags behind and cannot go forward and gain wealth in the face of these two people who work in concert. The upper middle class, the middle class, the 1%, white males and white females, man. They can't see it, man. And here's the thing. There's no incentive, unfortunately, and this is the thing that is so sad and so depressing rather, is that they have no incentive to change the dominant structure of black society, because that household is incentivized to remain the way it is. They are incentivized to do absolutely nothing about the status of black boys, black male youth, and black men.
I mean, look, ultimately, this is why I have a take pause and umbrage with intersectionality, right? Because it does what Robert Staples forecasts in the first paragraph of the goddamn article. I mean, ultimately, he foreshadows himself the very talking points of intersectionality. Black women are oppressed on racial dimensions and also on sexual dimensions, right? Then he goes on to explain the aggressiveness, the assertiveness, and the control that black women have over the household on some agency other than themselves. Yeah. Then he goes on to talk about how white women have no agency. This is the problem I have with Robert Staples, man. Yeah. He does not put white women on goddamn blast. And at some point, man, like, black men have to stop this sucker shit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's the biggest sucker fucking move I've seen. And men everywhere do this shit. It's like, look, I respect the origins of life. Yeah. I do. And I understand that there's something special about birth. Okay? I understand that. There are origins to every organism. And it's miraculous that life ever takes place. Okay? But gone are the days when we consider, birth to be something miraculous. We fucking understand scientifically how this shit takes place. We're not living in the times when you got mythic cults that don't thoroughly understand the ways that organisms are gestated and brought into fruition in the world.
Yeah.
We all this mystical bullshit about our origin is ridiculous, man. Look, women do deserve a respected place in terms of origins, but life must mature. There are developmental stages. This is why, even though I'm critical of white folks, the developmental psychology is a motherfucker, okay? So we do understand that there are stages that organisms go through. Yeah. They are born, they move from birth, they go through an oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, or genital, related stage, and then they usher and they gestate, and then they mature from the gestation to the maturation stage. But this origin worship is stultifying, stunting the growth of the culture in which we live. And at some point, we have to stop with this ontological superiority related to the origins and talk about fruitfulness and growing and the development of capacities and powers of all people. And that's my view on this. Now, look.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother. I'm just pissed off, man, reading this shit.
Let me tell you, man. I've read over. I've had problems with that issue. I've had problems with that thesis with the article because he was denying something that was very real, And again, he's overreacting to the Moynihan report, and he's trying to defend, in many ways, defend black women. That's what he's doing a lot in this article right here. And I understand the politics around it, but he went overboard. So the thing is that what we don't really attend to is the fact that black female status in the household, is an outgrowth of this tradition of oppression, okay, and survival. It's not something it's not normative, okay. And what happens is that we take something that was born out of survival, born out of oppression, that was born out of circumstances that were not optimal, and we lift it up and we turn it into an ideal, okay. And that is the fundamental problem that we have, and that's what we had back then and what we have right now, that her status had to do with her oppression, that the black male's place, if the black male really existed at that level of objection rather, which he describes in the article, it's because of social suppression. If the black male has an inferior status, if he had an inferior status in 1976, 1970, before 1965, it was due fundamentally to these forces of oppression. You can't just attribute it to character and some deficit in morality, or that he was just lazy and all that kind of stuff. They're much larger forces, and what happens is that the larger forces are overlooked. And the other thing, in terms of the white woman, I think that he was, unfortunately, like many scholars of his generation. I mean, he bought into this idea that these white women were truly oppressed. Okay, he bought into this idea that these middle class white women who were making these claims and all that kind of stuff, really had some type of deficit in terms of their lives that was, parallel to other oppressed peoples. You know what I mean? And that's just a flaw, in his thinking. You know what I mean? And I can't help but think about people like Gloria Steinem and other people who just argued relentlessly that somehow or another that upper middle class white women had something in common with black people.
Oh man, it just
and
fucks
he
me
bought
up,
into
man.
it, and he was one of the people who bought into it. And a lot, you have an entire generation. And I will give him grace, because as time went on, Staples, I would say this about Staples, you know this already, he did push back. He did not concede to every facet of feminism, okay? And he really did push back. But he did, like many of his generation, have this view, this assumption about white women, that somehow or another they were disconnected from white men, or their status had no real deep relationship to white men, and the people that educated us, the black scholars who were much older than us, the black scholars who are now in their 70s, who are now in their late 60s, those who were in their 80s, okay, they bought into that stuff, man.
Yeah, but it's time for a paradigm shift of a Kuhnian kind. And look, I am a firm believer in the moral responsibility and culpability of men and women fully, completely. I don't believe that one individual, because he has a scrotum and testicles, and a phallus, is superior or inferior to one with a uterus or a vagina. All I'm saying is both are fallible, okay? Both can be exceptional and virtuous. Both can be vicious and blameworthy. That's all I'm saying. But this idea that it was all white men's fault, that white women had no role to play in any of this shit, is a lie.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's a lie.
Yeah.
And it's coming out. So like in the woman who wrote the book, They Were Her Property.
Yeah.
Just beginning to like the book, The Delectable Negro, written by the brother who passed away. There's a whole host of books that demonstrate the perniciousness of white women and their contribution and participation in this colonial project, in this segregation and slave-based project. I don't give anybody a pass based on their so-called sexual performance or their gender. None of that. I don't do that.
No, man.
Okay.
If I hear you, man, here's the thing, man. We are looking at biology. We are looking at history. We're looking at evolution. I mean, we are taking we're taking into account civil. You know, I hate to use the word too much, but the history of civilizations, man. You know what I'm saying? And survival. And you have people out there, you know, who write books about sociobiology and all that kind of stuff that are ignored. Feminists hate that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because it forces them to deal with, you know, the evolutionary roles between men and women. Okay, and that, you know, there are reasons why we have a society that is shaped by monogamy. There's a reason why there's a transition from polygamy to monogamy. There was a reason why, you know, family structures, you know, are the way they are. You know what I'm saying? It just wasn't haphazard. You know, you understand?
Yeah, it's just something men impose on women in order to exploit and dominate them.
Yeah, there was no freaking conspiracy. It wasn't like there was some damn cabal or some mafia that decided some long ago, okay, this is what we're gonna do this is what we're gonna do to keep women down. Okay. And that's the narrative that we have been sold for decades. Okay, that there was just some type of some evil, you know, group of men in some secret society who decided that they were going to keep women down and advance the interests of men. You know, and what we have to do, you're right. We have to push back on that, because here's the thing, man. Even all the social engineering that we're doing right now, that we see happening right now, you know, hell, it's fake, it's artificial, it's not, it ain't rooted out of anything that's evolutionary. It's not rooted in anything that has to do with, you know, the movement from one epoch to the next in a kind of naturalistic way. It's not that. It's forced, okay? And that's why you have so much pushback, you know, even the stuff with masculinity. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you have the anti-masculinity stuff that's happening in our society, and then you have the people on the other side who are pushing back against it. And they're pushing back against it because masculinity has played a particular role in the world, whether they like it or not. Okay, right. Traditional masculinity has a place in society. You can't go. You haven't gone forward without it. So yeah, man. We have to push back, and we have to go against these narratives, and you know, we have to reread people like Stapleman. We have to reread people like him, and we have to look at their blind spots and look at where they didn't push back, and look at where they surrender and everything, and do that. I'm just, you know, insert someone else. There's another person to think about, Orlando Patterson.
Yes.
Orlando Patterson, the sociologist, an eminent guy who was at Harvard for so many years. He's an emeritus professor and everything. He's kind of similar in that regard. When you read his stuff on slavery, when you read his stuff on masculinity, if you read Rituals of Blood, the book that came out in 1997, man, and you look, and he's wrestling with feminism. He's pushing back on Black feminism and how Black feminism is regarding Black masculinity and this idea that Black men have privilege. You know, he pushes back on that whole notion. But at the same time, you have high levels of pathology. He pathologizes Black men in a way that is just horrid. I mean, and it's really consistent. You think about the 90s, man, with the super predator stuff. He was caught up in that super predator stuff like that, man. And it's talking about Black men as though Black men were monsters, you know? So on the one hand, you got this scholar who is saying, listen, we need to have a historical perspective on this stuff. But on the other hand, you have a scholar looking at these Black males from this deficit, criminal, abject perspective that is completely inaccurate.
Yeah, so this is why I went through this whole exercise. I thought it would be profitable and it would gain us some rewards. I mean, to know what we don't think, to know what others have thought. This is what Black male studies actually is about, you know. And I must say, though, at some point I'm going to begin to clean my act up. I mean, because right now I'm fiery and prophetic and I do a lot of cursing and, you know, hooping and hollering. But at some point, you know, I'm going to have to write some things down and to make some formal presentations in order to state the shortcomings of some of these ways of thinking that these black scholars in the past have pushed forth. And, we know more now, and we have a little bit of more experience under our belt, so we can do a more thoroughgoing analysis of some of the things that they've said, because we see what, has transpired since the liberation movement. I mean, in his expectation, black people were going to engage in black nationalism and wake up and understand, the exigencies of white supremacy, just to understand it and make the appropriate adjustments and changes. He didn't foresee, right, the power of the white feminist movement and its way to come in, and because it's not white men that's doing this, it's white women doing this. They're performing this work, and it works for them. But the funny thing about it is, those very white women go home to their white husbands.
Yeah.
But
by and large,
that's the trick bag. That is a trick bag all along. They teach non-black, non-white women this, while they go back and play the politics to keep in power. Because it's like this. Women don't understand. If you find a group of women trying to say you should do this, that to a man, and they go home and do something different, that's telling right there. And you have to be stupid as fuck. But most women don't use logic anyway, so. Fact.
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say women don't use logic, because I think that they use logic in a wide variety of instances. But here's the deal. This is the thing I don't like. Don't put to me that you're looking out for black men when you know fucking damn well you're not. Don't do that. I'm not playing that game with black women, man. Don't act like you're sitting here and working for my fucking interest, knowing goddamn well you're basically doing everything you can to countermand my evolution, so that you can continue to revel in this fucking racist project that is deleterious to black men, and creates death for us, and it creates social death for us, and then exclaim that you're somehow magical and you're working for our advantage. Stop that. That's bullshit. Like you see it with BLM, you see it with all, the politics on the left in the Democratic Party. You see this shit everywhere. You see it in popular media now. If black men don't begin to push back against, and I'm not just talking about on YouTube either. We need to be writing think pieces, articles, the whole nine, books, documentaries, movies, whatever the fuck we can get our hands on, books of all kinds, fiction, nonfiction. We need to be using every form of media at our disposal to give expression to our situation and our experiences. That's coming. I don't think that there's any. The only thing stopping black men from doing this is black men. At this
Facts.
This is the only thing stopping us now, because they'll try to shame has shut us down for so long. But I will say this: the impetus that men have in general to protect all women of all kinds and races. Because what Robert Staples is doing in this article, to me, is protecting the honor and the dignity of white women, by and large, in this article. Now, he may push back against this somewhere else. I have to see what he has to say elsewhere. But here, what it seems to me is this man is defending white womanhood and black womanhood at the same time. And look, this shit right here is white knight bullshit. I'm not all the way through and through, because he does have some valid points that he makes, but he oscillates back and forth. He's caught in a schizophrenic and a non-committal position. He's trying to skirt a Skiller on one hand and the Charybdis on the other side. No, you can't have it both ways, bro. Either you're gonna talk about you're gonna talk about white racism and all its manifestations and everyone's participation in it, whether they be black men, black women, white men, whatever. Whoever's involved in the shit, we gotta talk about it, right? It just is what.
Yeah. Let me say this about Robert Staples in his later thought, and this is we're dealing with the 70s. We have to deal with it. It's important that we deal with this era, this moment, and everything. And so he put out a book in the 2000s on Black popular culture. It was on Black popular culture. It was Black sexuality and popular culture. I think Rutledge Press published it or what have you. It was probably one of his last books that he wrote. And I had it, and he made an observation in that book about feminism, which is very, very, very significant, white feminism. And here's the observation that he made. I will never forget it. He was saying that when we think about feminism, we have to think about the smallest population of human beings on the planet. That is The vast majority of the people on planet Earth are not white. Okay. And that the feminist perspective that we have to contend with in the West comes from a minority of people, a minority of white women. And we have to always keep that in mind in terms of whether the ideas of feminism will, go into perpetuity or they'll continue to influence the culture and all that kind of stuff. That these were a small group of women out of America, out of Europe, who were advancing these ideas that were, outside of the norm or what have you. But they are always contrasted. They will always be contrasted with the morality, the politics, and ethics of the majority of people on planet Earth. So it's like when you have, even we have brothers talking about going to Africa or going to the Caribbean or leaving America to go to places where masculinity is still respected. In some sense, what they're saying is that there are parts of the world that have not been influenced by this ideology. Okay. Now, I mean, having said that, with globalization, man, and technology, I mean, it's hard not to be influenced by this stuff. But the point that I want to make is that we're talking about a small group of people, and we have to always keep it in mind, even in the U.S., man. And I've said this on your other platforms when we had this conversations. You're where you are in Texas. I'm here in North Carolina, man. I live in a thorough red state. And I look at, I've been studying conservative white people for decades, okay? And their lives are completely different, man. Their morality is completely different, okay? They don't, where I am in the South, the Southern states, man, feminism has no real currency here, okay? It's an underground, it's an avant-garde thing. It's confined primarily to the universities. It's confined to the artistic subcultures and everything. But when you talk about the state, you talk about legislatures, when you talk about business and business practices and all of that, when you get out and you're interacting with people, in the downtown, in bars and restaurants, man, I mean, people are still very traditional, bro. So feminism, although it is a significant ideology and it has influenced people, man, there still remains a significant part of American society. And this goes back to the Donald Trump thing. There's a pushback. When you look at Trump, man, and you look at the people who supported Trump and all that kind of stuff, I don't care who they were, black, white, Latino, or whatever, there's pushback. They don't want this stuff, man. They don't want to be told how to structure their families and how they want to live. And the left and the liberals, they have a very difficult time with this. And I think that as we go forward, we're going to see more conflict over these ideas, about gender, about sexuality, and all that kind of stuff. And then when they started, then when they bring race into it, and they begin to use black people as mascots for it, it just heightens the tension, man. But the overall point is, man, is that I don't see how they can go any further than where they are right now. And what it means is that we have to push back like everybody else.
Yeah, and I'm here for the pushback. I think that this movement of a small fraction of the population in a specific place in time. The funny thing about it is this oppression comes out of the context in which you have the most privileged women in the world. I mean, this is the oxymoronic thing about it, right? Namely, that this movement comes at a time and a place in which the United States has more wealth, more privilege and esteem throughout the entirety of the world than in any other country damn near in the annals of time, right? And you got a group of women who, for the most part, have been able to shoehorn themselves into basically all of the accoutrements that were supposed to be given to black people out of the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
That's what feminism spells to me. I'm sorry, but I never have perceived white women as being somehow powerless, impotent, passive, inactive. You know, I've never perceived them that way, but I've always perceived them as dangerous. That's just
Yeah,
me.
they always had a track record of dangerous, even now in this Western hemisphere. And I think to my this is how I view Dr. O'Neill. As we move more into what they call urbanization and they try to spread across the world more heavy, I could see that changing. It won't be this century, but potentially another century if things are played out. Because this works. It controls people. When you have a set of people and how you able to dominate and rule, you have to imbalance the sexes, you know, empower the women, fragile the men. It
Well,
makes
look,
for
white men ain't gonna stand for this shit too much longer. I'm telling you right now. You saw
Oh,
it
they're
with
not.
Donald. You
They're
saw it
not.
with Donald Trump when he came. I call it the malleus maleficarum. Now that shit. Now Biden comes into office, so he's gonna basically repudiate that act and repeal it.
Well,
But
he's going to remove certain acts that Donald Trump put in office for the first 4 years.
look,
Right.
let me just say this, man. It was a pleasure to be able to speak with y'all brothers on this Thanksgiving Day. I just got a hit on my quitter, and I'm about to go eat some turkey, man, and
All right.
try to stuff
Green
myself with some
Gorilla.
stuffing. You know,
Yep.
not that I really actually give a damn about Thanksgiving in relation to its political
Man,
symbolism.
eat up, man. Have some fun. Eat, drink, and be merry, brother.
Yes, sir. And look, I want to give a shout out to all the people who joined me this evening or this afternoon, because it ain't evening yet. It ain't 5 o'clock yet. I want to give a shout out to Forrest Windu. I see some visitors. I see the Crimson Cure out there. Kendra, I see BGS, Eon, Che Mack. Thank you for your donation, Mr. Heat, Black Sigma.
Shout out BGS.
Yeah. I give and shout out to all of y'all, man, out
Yes,
here,
to the
man. I want
elder.
you to enjoy the holidays, man. Even if you don't have a particular affiliation ideologically or connection ideologically to the holidays. True 7360, thank you for your donation, sir. And I see another brother up here. I'm trying to get to him. Cusp of Power, thank you, sir, for your donation. He says those who will to transform destiny must first will to transform history. We are listening to the development of our new Black Blueprint. Preach on, brothers. Thank you so much, for your donation. And look, let me just say this, man. All we got is us, man. So let's do what we got to do, man, in order to make ourselves better and improve our condition, man.
Yes,
and
sir.
let us not feel ashamed or afraid to speak, because the biggest weapon that stands against us is our silence.
Mm.
Bottom
Exactly.
line.
Yeah.
The biggest weapon is our own mouthpiece. We use any form of expression to let people know how we feel and what we think about our condition and our situation. Before I leave, I also want to give a shout out to 2Triv, 211, Jasper Burns, Rashid Davis. Thank you all for your donations, particularly Jasper Burns, who had a pretty generous one. So thank you for you gentlemen and ladies out there. And look, freedom is a road seldom traveled by the multitude. I'll holler at y'all later, man. Peace.
And share the video too.
Yeah,
Take
share
care.
that video, y'all. Peace
I'll
out,
see you later.
y'all. One. Yeah. I'm a phenomenon, I shine like Orion. I came in a rap gang to smack it up like Heron, transform it like Megatron. Wait, like Amatron, most rappers are some peons. I'ma starve them like Ramadan, I'm troublesome. You don't really want no troublesome, cause I pop guns like hood chicks do bubble gum. I been dumb, gon' stay that way till kingdom come. When the sun I'm at, unleash a demon, a polygon. I'm heavy, son, got more knowledge than Farrakhan. More gang than Cap, come with that bishop named Don Juan. Stay lit off some Shandon, maybe about they ram. Stay great to some Nordstrom. Call me that Dapper Don, more violent than Genghis Khan. The members of Taliban, niggas faker than silicon. Get hit like a .com, like soldiers in Lebanon. I'm bringing that red rum. When I get through with you, son, you gon' think I see rap. Run!
carry weight like a heavyweight. Bake more cakes than patty cake. Watch the fiend salivate. You a lightweight, bantam weight. Better contemplate. If you violate, make you levitate to the pearly gates. I fascinate when I conversate from the show me state where these niggas love to hate and hot murder rate or the waste. But this flow is just a taste of God's grace. Shining this light in the ugly place in the prophecy. Got more wisdom than Socrates' philosophies. You don't really want no parts of me, can't you see? I'm slicker than Mephistopheles, stronger than Hercules, more dangerous than the Damocles. The MCs trying me pretty please. I wet up they white tees, knock them out they wallabies. Now they touch my deliries. For coming up shorter than little C's when I break out the killer bees. I study music like Ocassi, hit chicks look like Ashanti. When I'm breaking them off, they yell at I'm poppy. You rack rappers is sloppy, you can't stop me with that. We can sorry, copy, Malaki. I'm a monster like Frankenstein, rock harder than Palestine. You slams, dropping dimes, a snake and serpentine. Take stand and steamy glow like Nas with a big shine. All you haters cold in it, cold sores need calamine. But my hot shit like red bricks hitting your head. Leave the sour taste up in your mouth like lemon heads, like simply red. Wasted some years up in the fans when I touched down. Oh, dirty red that gave me head. I got higher vision for higher living. I'm highly driven. I'm acting women like it's some sort of sick religion. Driving an Impala, sitting on it each 20 inches, and they spinning just like the planets in the solar system.
Black country people, over in Africa, down to America. Black country people, we make all the world go round and around, yes. Black country people, up in Canada, down to Jamaica. Black country people, we make all the world go round and around.